Welcome back to the Executive Outlook. I'm Isha Taneja, your host for today, co-founder and CEO of Complear Infosystem. Today's guest is someone who fell in love with Power BI as a university student and has spent her career helping organizations make data actually useful for people who need it every day. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, today we are going to talk about one of the most practical and important topics in the data world right now: how to enable power users build self service analytics the right way and stop data from being a messy that nobody can manage. So, this will be the discussion we are going to have it today. Let me start that how you discover Power BI when you were just a student, and how did it happen, and what got you so hooked on this?
So I was working at this company who just started introducing Power BI. I was, to be honest, the first one to test it in the company. And it was painful at first because Power BI and DAX especially works completely different than SQL that I knew at the time. So the whole logic of it is completely different. But then when I started slowly to understand it, how Power BI works and why it does things as it does, I discovered I'm pretty good at solving problems in Power BI. But the love for Power BI really bloomed as I was working as a consultant, and I discovered that you can write C# scripts in Power BI to automate things. And this is what got me really hooked into it.
Oh, that's amazing. So that was just a starting point. At that time, you were able to make an understanding, okay, how we can analyze the data, whether it's a Power BI or any other tool. So I want to understand that what is your feeling when you tell business that, hey, this is the area of growth and this is where you can make an impact, and how the data driven decisions actually helping the businesses?
So to be honest, most of my clients already were in some way working with data. So there was no discussion there to, hey, you need data to support decisions. They were always working with some kind of data, some with just Excel somewhere or anywhere, because I can imagine that right now there are only few companies that don't use data at all. There is always some kind of data trace in it already. The hard discussion, I think, is mostly, hey, you need to invest in some BI to make the data clean, to make one source of truth for your data in your company. And why is it important that you all look at the same data when you are talking about some numbers? And I think that with every client, you have to have different approach. You have to feel a bit how he works or she works, what's important for him or her, and then decide how you approach it. So it's not an easy question to answer. Like, I'm a consultant, so it depends is the answer mostly.
Everyone has a different needs, different perspectives to have a look how the data works for their businesses.
Yeah.
So while you are into the consulting field, what did you learn from working with so many different businesses?
So I learned not only to listen to the clients, but also to observe and to challenge. Because there are many different ways to achieve the same goal in Power BI. And listen to your clients and stakeholders is very important. But if you ask them, for example, so I had this a lot of times, I asked the client or the stakeholders, so what data do you need in this report? The answer in many cases was all of it, all that we have. So it's not wrong, it's not a lie, because they really need that data. They need to see maybe this one product like 10 years ago to compare how it developed, of course. But they won't look at the 10 million products they have in the company over the last 10 years to one point. So by learning, like by sitting with the people and just observing how they work with data, you can make better decisions how to display the data, how to prepare the data for them. And you can maybe make a decision that not import all of data, but only a portion of it, and the rest of it have as DirectQuery. It can impact a lot when you learn how people are working with the data. So that's what I learned, just to not only ask questions, but also to let them show you how they work with data.
You work a lot with the self-service analytics and enable organizations to do that. So do you want to explain it in a very simple way that what is self-service analytics and how it has impacted business?
So I think that there's no one definition of self-service. Every company does it in a different way. Every company understands something different under it. So I will talk about me and how I see it and the model I work with mostly. And I will be talking about self-service analytics in Power BI because this is what I know best. So I see Power BI self-service in 3 stages. The first one is no self-service, where the BI department does everything. There is the full self-service, where the BI department only has an admin role, so they grant permissions and that's it. Or maybe also observe the capacity and make sure that nothing makes too many costs. But then we have the full self-service, so the departments do their analysis, create reports and semantic models and so on themselves. So BI only admin and BI does everything. So the department does everything else. And then we have the medium self-service. And this is where I think the golden middle is, where BI department and the other departments cooperate, where BI departments create semantic models with all the measures that are needed, and the other departments are creating reports, are creating ad hoc analysis as they need, doing subscriptions and everything they need. So that ensures that there is a single point of truth because the BI department is taking care of the data, it's managing it, and it gives the freedom to the power users to do everything they need and not wait for the BI department to develop a report or something.
And the advantage of this will be that they will not have to come again and again to the BI team for building the semantic to make any small changes within the report. So it is more
Exactly.
of a actual work they are doing, making the semantic layer available for them.
Exactly. And also, I think it saves costs in a way because like mostly controlling or other departments, they are already pulling some data from somewhere or getting some data from the BI department and doing their own analysis in Excel. Like almost every company, so the whole BI world stands on Excel. So in almost every company, there are people who are even given some reports. They are still doing their own analysis because they need it. So
Right.
this way they can do it more easily, can access the data more easily.
Amazing. So one of the main problem is that everyone connects to the same data model and over the time things start falling apart. So what do you think, in your opinion, what's the best way to avoid this situation so that this should not keep happening again and again?
So semantic model evolves over time. I never saw a semantic model that was created once and left alone for 10 years. So always there are new tables that are coming in, new measures, new special built-ins for some kind of visualization, I don't know, switches, field parameters, whatever. And it becomes bigger and bigger and slower with that as well. And you cannot see it at first because it's mostly small changes added up over time. So when you notice it got slow, it's too late already and you have to rebuild it. So my approach is to never start with one semantic model. Find the use cases, sit with your power users, learn how they work with data, define use cases for your models, and never build everything in once. For example, I had a client where we created one semantic model for analysis that you see every day. Like it was, I think, only the last year or something, or last 2 years on weekly basis, on category, not product level. And it was across all the different tables. So there was financial data, there was marketing data, there was everything, but made smaller. The granularity was much, much smaller. So this was one for overview. And then we had the pillars with semantic models with specific data. We had the financial data. We had another semantic model for the inventory, another model for the marketing data, where people could connect and just do a talk analysis. So if they saw something in the overview that was some outlier, they could analyze it in the bigger models where we had the data in very, very small granularity. So like on product level, product variant level even, and for every day. But it was only contained to this one type of data, the finance data. Of course, we had to make some adjustment because, for example, inventory data, I think, made only sense with some finance data. So what we did, we just added a few columns from this finance data to the inventory table, and we had it all again. So things like that you can adjust to, again, listen to your users, because if you just gave them the pretty model that you made, but there is some data missing that they need to evaluate it, it won't be used. So we sat with the people, we heard them, and we added the measures in it, the columns in it. So this is my favorite example. How can you build a structure around it? How can you divide the data that it makes sense for everyone and still is performant and easy to maintain? Also, what keeps from the model getting slow and heavy is keeping it simple. If you are giving your semantic model for self-service, it has to be simple, it has to be flexible. And because the users will do with your model unimaginable things. You have no idea what they will do with your data. So all the measures you are creating, all the columns you are giving them, doesn't matter in what context they add them up, it has to make sense. It has to make sense, because else you will end up with false information, and you don't want to do that.
Right. So, one question I have, that business users who are not the data experts and they don't feel much confidence working with the data, right? So, how you make them feel confident that they can start utilizing data on their everyday work they are being doing?
So I think the most important parts of self-service, in any way you are doing it, is training and support system. Training and support system for your power users, for your consumers, for your BI team as well. So everybody knows the best practices. Everybody knows how to work with that. So Power BI is pretty easy to use. You can click your report in a few minutes, even if you just open it for the first time. But because of that, it's also pretty easy to misuse and to make some things wrong, make something slow. So that's why I think that training is very important, to just give the people tools they can use, give the people knowledge of the best practices, how to create a report, how to create a good semantic model, how to do all the admin stuff. So training is the first one, but also what I like to do is create a community inside of a company. It can be a Teams channel where people can ask questions and just exchange knowledge. It can be a meeting. It can be once a week. It can be bi-weekly. It can be once a month, where people just gather and talk. So I did it a lot of times. Most of it in the meetings. At first, I was the one showing new features, or new to them, or new in general, because Power BI got an update. I was answering their questions. I was helping them solve problems. But with time, other people joined, and they wanted to show something they learned. They wanted to show something they developed. They wanted to show how they solved a problem. So with time, I wasn't needed, and people were just sharing their experience with Power BI, sharing their problems, answering also another's questions. So that's what I like to do in community, to just create a small community where people can exchange knowledge, so they can grow as well.
That's a very good idea. And basically, this will give them a lot of power. They're also upskilling themselves, and their questions are getting answered through a channel, right? So that is very important.
Exactly. And
And that
with time,
can make,
and
yeah,
with
yeah,
time,
please.
it's not dependent on the BI team, because it's shifted to the power users and their own community. So
Yep. So, one thing is you have a lot of experience on building the semantic models, right? So, what is your approach to build a semantic layer step by step?
So I have a lot of experience in creating semantic models, because I'm no good in creating reports. So let's get this out first. So that's why I also love the self-service approach, because it took from me away the things that I'm not good at, and it went to the people that are better at it. And so what is the best approach to create a semantic model for self-service? As I said, first of all, make it easy, make it flexible, make it robust. So no special cases, no like ifs and switches in every single measure. And also make your life easier. Just use automation to create stuff. Just use, for example, what I like to do when I'm creating a semantic model for self-service is to use calculation groups to just define the things once and don't bother with more. But the thing with calculation groups is when you are using them, you cannot switch the order of the items when you are a user. So, and I can imagine, so I had this a lot of times, that my users, like every one of them, needed some other order for that. So what I ended up doing is to create every single measure for every single object there. But it is tedious when you're doing it by hand. So for things like that, you can use automation. You can use C# scripts or now also user-defined functions, and there are many other ways how you can achieve that. So make your life easier, make automation, and with automation, you can also ensure that all your semantic models have the same structure, the same naming, so the users can find the UI easily and can understand it better when they're using it. So I think these are the most important things when developing a model for self-service. But first, hear the users out, see how they work and what data do they need. So this is always the most important thing.
So the last question I want to ask to you is, what has been the hardest client situation you faced in your consulting career?
I was a junior back then, and it was a big company with a lot of data, and they had this one big semantic model that grew into a monstrosity over time. And there are two other consultants that were taking care of it, and they left. They left like few weeks apart, and I was left alone with it. And as soon as they were out of the door, the thing started crumble. Like every day we had a new error message. There was a lot of things done in DirectQuery, and it doesn't deliver any insight into the error message. So it took me 1 month to stabilize it, just so I ensured it works again. And after that, I told my POs we have to rebuild it from scratch, because when we add anything to it, it will crumble again. It's just hanging there by a thread. And then we started a process of rebuilding the whole Power BI architecture. It took us 8 months to do it. So it was a lot of talking to different stakeholders, finding out what they need, what we can do, what we cannot do. It was a long process, but I learned a lot from it. And I learned also a lot about debugging in Power BI, finding out the different error messages under the hood. So now when I look back at it, I'm really glad it happened, but it was very stressful at the time.
I do understand, because creating from scratch, understanding and meeting their expectations, they were used to look at a certain way, and now like they have to reiterate all the things they wanted, and they wanted to be accurate like they used to have it. Okay, I do understand your situation. I can imagine that at that time you were alone, and then you had to talk to different stakeholders, meeting the expectations. That is very important, and making sure they are getting the same results they were getting it before, right? So there should not be any numbers mismatch.
Yeah, it's easier to start with why I am saying never start with one semantic model, because it's easier to start with many semantic models than after a time say to people, oh, you won't have everything in one model anymore. We have to rebuild it. The change
Yeah.
management is very painful and very long and very stressful for everyone, because users are also afraid they won't have the data they need anymore.
Thank you so much. I think we are almost at time, and it is a lovely conversation with you. I really enjoyed your stories, how you deep dive into the things, how you build it, what is your mindset of building it, how to take care of the things in advance so that it doesn't create a mess afterwards. So all of those stories were really, really great. And from a learning perspective, definitely audience will enjoy those things. Thank you so much for sharing your perspectives.
Thank you for having me. I was really glad to share my story. Thanks.